The Honorable Gregory Nicholls, Minister of Home Affairs and Information, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs and Information, Mr. Ron Drayton, Director of the Meteorological Services, Mr. Sabu, Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Ms. Kerry Hinds, Chief of Staff, Barbados Defense Force, Brigadier the Honorable Carlos Lovell, President, the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Anthony Green, Senior Underwriter, Sagicor General Insurance, Inc., Ms. Kerry Bruce, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We welcome you to the press conference to launch the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, right here at the Department of Emergency Management. And today being very significant, the first day of June 2026, as we know, is the official start of the hurricane season, which extends to November 30th. And this year, we as a nation are ready, and we encourage every Barbadian to play their part with regards to preparedness and mitigation measures to ensure that during this hurricane season, that even if we are impacted, that Barbadians would know how to respond and what to do. So today, we thank you for joining us virtually, and we do hope that the information that you would receive today would inform your preparation activities at the corporate level, at the community level, and at the individual level. To bring welcome and opening remarks, I now invite my director, Ms. Kerry Hinds, the Director of the Department of Emergency Management, to give welcome remarks.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies. Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Gregory Nicholls. Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs and Information, Ms. Sharon Drayton. Director, Barbados Meteorological Services, Mr. Sabu. Brigadier, the Honorable Carlos Lovell, Chief of Staff, Barbados Defense Force. President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Anthony Green. Ms. Kerry Bruce, Senior Underwriter, Sagicor General Insurance, Inc. Deputy Director, Major Robert Harewood, Department of Emergency Management. Staff of the Department of Emergency Management, members of the media, online and virtual audience, my fellow Barbadians, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone this morning to the Department of Emergency Management as we usher in the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, which, as you know, runs from June 1st, today, to November 30th. We utilize this opportunity to share very key information, critical information, to not only our stakeholders, but also the public at large. Every year, these weather events remind us of two truths. We cannot control the storm, but we can control how ready we are for it. Preparedness is not just a checklist. It is a mindset. It is about protecting our lives, our livelihoods, safeguarding properties, assisting communities, building communities so they are resilient and they can bounce back as quickly as possible after impact. You will hear us speak about key preparedness actions that you as the public should take, you as businesses should take, you as an individual should take. You'll hear us talk about knowing your shelter locations, about making sure that your family members know what they should do if something occurs. You'll hear us speak about building your emergency family kit. Do you have your important documents safeguarded? Do you have your flashlights, your batteries? Do you have your stores of water and non-perishable foods? You will hear us also speak to being informed. Ensure that you sign up for the various weather alerts, and you need to follow the trusted resources like the Barbados Met Services, our local media houses, and of course the Department of Emergency Management on our various social media channels, in the various print media, and what's not. You will hear us talk about addressing these misconceptions that people seem to have. Every single system is different. Every single one. A Category 1 storm can cause catastrophic flooding. It can be slow moving. Just take your minds back to Melissa last year when it affected Jamaica. You saw the devastation that ensued. We cannot stop the storms, but we can be ready for them. Preparation is not just about survival. It really is about peace of mind. And it is about knowing that you've done everything that you can to protect your family and to protect your property. On an ongoing basis, the Department of Emergency Management refines its plans and procedures and actions to ensure it is in a constant state of readiness. We lobby for and attract the necessary resources to support any emergency preparedness, response, and recovery effort. We continue to support our partner agencies in their planning and seeking to ensure that there are viable options for emergency management. Over the last couple of months, we have increased our readiness actions. That is not to say that as the Department of Emergency Management, we are in the business of comprehensive disaster management. We deal with multiple hazards. We have to be ready at all times. But we do understand that particularly at this time of the year, we have the threat of a hurricane hazard. And as such, we try to increase our readiness efforts. Now that would include legislative reviews of our Emergency Management Act. It would include policy reviews, our various procedures. It also includes looking at our various facilities, our equipment, ensuring that it is ready. It is about training our emergency responders, training our community personnel, training our partners. It is about ensuring that we have the necessary memorandum of understanding. Because we know, as the Department of Emergency Management, we cannot do it alone. We have to embrace various partners, and partners at the national level, at the community level, and also at the regional and international levels. It is about ensuring that our staff are prepared for any eventuality. I want to use this opportunity today as a call to action. Let us make a commitment today to be prepared, to make preparedness contagious. as households, as businesses, as communities, as government, as we get ready, it is important that the whole nation becomes stronger because of this effort. Again, I tell you, we can't stop the storms. We can't stop the various hazards from occurring. But together we can ensure that when they do, we stand ready, we stand unified. And I also want the public to utilize the resources available to them. There are many, including this hurricane preparedness checklist, which is available on our various websites and our social media channels. But there are so many resources abound, and it is important that you seek to leverage all the resources available to you. So again, I thank you and I welcome everyone to be a part of the preparedness and readiness efforts for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season and beyond. Thank you.
We thank you, Director Hinds, for your inspiring words and also the reminder that we cannot move the storm, but we can be ready for it. And speaking about storms and weather activity, there's a very important person who everyone looks forward to hearing from every hurricane season, because he has a way of breaking it down for all of us to understand. So at this point, we are going to invite the Director of the Barbados Meteorological Services, none other than Mr. Sabu Best, to give us the prognosis of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season.
Thanks, Simon. I really appreciate you setting up the mics for me. A little hard for me to move at this point in time. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here again. It's been a while since I've done one of these presentations, so I'm a bit nervous, I'm a bit rusty, so bear with me. So let's jump right in. So overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at the 2025 season recap. That's important if we're going to talk about the future this year, to understand where we were, how well we did, so we can gauge on how usefully information we give you 2026 could be. And then we look at 2026 hurricane season prognosis and the factors influencing the 2026 season. And just have a quick look at the names and the supplemental list and what that means. And a quick look at the rainfall outlooks, because it's just not the hurricane season starting, it's also our rainy season. So, season recap. The season 2025, historically unique due to the high percentage of the major hurricanes, including Melissa, which was one of the strongest hurricanes on record. We had 13 named storms. 5 of those developed into hurricanes, and of those 5, 4 went on to major hurricanes. That's a really high ratio, guys. Very high. That's almost all of them. All 4 of them, of those major hurricanes, underwent rapid intensification. All 4. That's something to really note. So, in our neck of the woods, because I mean this press conference should be really focusing on our neck of the woods and not the entire Atlantic. Let's talk about our area of interest, where it affects Barbados. And so, for the past 2 years, you've been seeing a prediction from the Met Office for the Atlantic main development area, which is to our east. We've been doing this with some great deal of success. So 2025 forecast from the Met Office predicted a tropical storm range of 5 to 8 tropical storms, of which 2 to 5 can become hurricanes, and of which 0 to 2 become major. What actually happened in 2025, we had 5 tropical storms. Only 1 went on to become a hurricane, and that same one was a major hurricane any day. And so we were a bit in the lower end of things in 2025, but it was still very close to our forecast range. The table you see to the bottom right speaks about the climatology and the forecast and what was observed from the entire Atlantic. And you can see how that actually matches to the numbers that we saw in 2025, where climatology is around 14 storms to the entire Atlantic, 7 of which become hurricanes, and 3 of those 7 become major hurricanes. And you can see how that matches up to the forecast last year and what actually was observed, which was actually below par from even those forecasts as well. So, 2026 hurricane season forecast. I just mentioned the climatological average, and so you can see from a number of agencies which we also follow, from Colorado State, Tropical Storm Risk, University of Arizona, and even NOAA, which was just recently published a few days ago. Essentially, most agencies, except for one, are calling for an average to below average hurricane season. Now, when we make these predictions or show them to you, we always stress, guys, it is not if it is above average, average, or below average. It only takes one major hurricane. And that slide I showed you before from the 2025 season, where there was only one hurricane, and that one hurricane went on to be a major hurricane, that could track through the region and be devastating. It only takes one. It wasn't an active season, but it only takes one. That's the important thing. I really want you to know it. And so we talk to give you some kind of gauge as to what these predictions mean. How can you trust them? To what degree? So tropical storm forecast last 10 years, you can see from this bar chart here, what you like to call the city buildings, and then line above that like the waves of the ocean, if you like, but that's what actually happened. So you can see, apart from 2020, the predictions have been pretty close to what actually happened. So for the most part, they can be trusted. So in 2026 now, which is this year, you see the height of those buildings for tropical storm. This is actually one of the lowest predictions we had in 8 years for tropical storms. And so it's all indications that the season will not be that active. But I want to stress on this again, even though it's indications that will not be that active, do not let your guard down. It only takes one. If we were predicting 0 storms or -10, then maybe we can relax a little bit, but the point is we're not. The same applies for hurricanes. Again, past 8 years since we had a prediction this low. And again, you can see from the wiggly line above the tall skyscrapers, they're pretty close, apart from 2020, to what actually occurred. And 2025, which was a bit over forecasted, like to say, but 2025 was low on what was expected. This one is also important. The major hurricanes. Look at the height of those buildings in 2026 for what's actually forecasted compared to previous years. Interesting. Really low. Past 10 years since we had something that low. 10 years. What this means? It means that we probably won't see so much intense hurricanes. But the point is, there will be. Rest assured. We're still, and you know, I show you that slide, very first intro slide. I mentioned the high percentage of hurricanes that actually went on into major hurricanes. It doesn't matter if you have 1 or 2. The fact that the energy is there and that rapid intensification is becoming more and more a thing of the norm each year as we go on, and that's very important. So even though there's a system that may be developing to your east, one may think that it's too close to intensify to something major. The fact that rapid intensification, which can bring a tropical storm, which the system can be a tropical storm the night before and become a Cat 2 or 3 hurricane the very next morning, is a real thing. It's realistic. And so you have to be prepared for the worst. This one is really important. We've been showing this for the past 2 years, and because it's important that we hammer this home to all Barbadians. I just want you to really focus on the yellow line to the bottom of this graph. This looks all the way back, I believe it's more than 100 years in tropical cyclones passing in proximity to Barbados. And the yellow line is cyclones passing within 50 kilometers of the shoreline of the island. That's the center. And you can see over time that has actually been growing. The other lines, the red and blue, more or less the same, wavy up and down if you like, but what's important is that yellow line. In other words, guys, the threat is increasing. The risk is real. It is real. You're not making it up. We have it even on the table you see on the right to the bottom, very bottom of the table. Just focus on that. Don't worry about all those numbers. The very last line, 1996 to 2025, within 50 kilometers of Barbados, 7 systems. 7. Compared to any other year, never before seen. That's a very popular comment, Minister. Never before seen. It's the first time it's happened, and don't be surprised if it continues to increase. So, for 2026, what that means for us in our area, I showed you the predictions from the whole entire Atlantic, but let's drill down again, like I said, closer to home. So, the main development area to our east, from our predictions, again, I should mention the average, climatological average for tropical cyclones in our neck of the woods is around 5 storms, 2 of which become hurricane, and one of the 2 become a major hurricane. And so our prediction range for 2026 is 5 to 7 storms, 2 to 3 become hurricane, and of those 2 to 3, 1 to 2 become major. And so we try to nail it down to a precise number, which is 6, 2, and 1, you see in brackets, but try not to focus on a precise number because it's not that exact. There could be a system that forms just inside or outside this box, which can obviously skew the numbers. Essentially, what it's saying is that we're looking at approximately an average hurricane season within our neck of the woods. An average. It does not mean to let down your guard. It really does not. Now, there was a lot of conversation, a lot of hype about El Nino, and so I'm not going to try to compound this conversation and try to explain what these charts mean. Essentially, what it means is that there's a very high probability, very high chance of an El Nino this year. What that generally does, historically, is suppress convection, hurricane activity in the Atlantic east of us. Not the entire Atlantic, east of us. We may very well see increased activity in Gulf and Caribbean Sea, but in general, it suppresses activity. But there's another point I want to stress on you. We are in a new era where we're seeing the impacts of climate change to the averages, or what we know, what we see every day or every hurricane season. We're above average in terms of temperature. We broke our maximum temperature in 2023 record. We got above normal sea surface temperatures. So everything is not normal. But we're basing predictions off of history. And if we're in uncharted territory, do we then expect history to be the same? I'll give you a real life example. If you like barbecue, like I do, and you see, and you know you purchase barbecue every whatever weekend, and you expect a chef that you go to gives you the flavor of barbecue you normally get, and so because it's this same chef, every single weekend you expect to get the same quality. But are there not factors that affect how he performs or she? They are. And so, therefore, it is the same with the Atlantic Ocean. If all things being equal are the same, then you would expect that it should behave as the records intend. But if you are seeing increase in sea surface temperature, more energy, then we must be very careful when we look at historical records and try to imply that it will be the same. So do not let your guard down. Our predictions could easily be wrong. It could be an active season. And then we say, hold on, what happened? Do not let your guard down. It's just a simple, well, some people may say it's not simple. I hope you can see it clearly on your screen. So the El Nino is just warming, above normal warming of the waters in the Pacific. And so that tends to cause sinking air in our neck of the woods in the Atlantic. And sinking air just stops clouds. Clouds want to grow. And air is sinking, coming down, trying to suppress it. Okay, just keep it simple like that. We're not going to go very deep into this. We have some really interesting videos online on our website if you want to know more about what El Nino, or I should say the ENSO, is about. So 2026 Atlantic storm names. I'm just going to name off a couple. We start with Arthur, Bertha, and Cristobal. And if we have another 2020, which don't look like this year, there's we have a supplemental list. If we exhaust all of the names of the 2026 season, then we go into a supplemental list. Once upon a time, we used to use the Greek alphabet, but 2026 taught us that we were forced to return some Greek letters, and that meant that we had to come up with a new idea, which was this supplemental list. Rainfall outlook. This is important. So, like I said, where hurricane season also comes our rainy season. And so from our deterministic statistical modeling, forecasting that we've been doing for years now, this rainy season from June, this is the latest that we got from the climate team a few days ago. From June to October, we're looking at below to near average rainfall patterns for the island. What that means is that, the most part, some sections may actually still be pretty dry in the wet season or experience dry periods. We do anticipate that in the heat season, especially around August or September, when we get those light winds and heavy downpours in St. James, St. Thomas, etc., that you can actually get rainfall amounts that will burst the ceilings of these predictions. It's very difficult to make a prediction for a very small isolated event that can give you downpours. I've always been saying that what we've been seeing in general is this reduction in rainfall activity, but an increase in these real intense short burst activities, which can skew off all your predictions in one go. Just a few weeks ago, for example, in Dominica, in the middle of the dry season, 400 millimeters of rain out of the blue. 400. That's mind-boggling. That's even more than what we have so far for the year. It's probably more than what we're going to have by the end of July. But it's mind-boggling. And that happened in just a space of a few hours. 400. That's almost half a meter of rainfall. Those kind of scenarios, and then right after the event, everything goes back to normal. A lull again. It's like, what happened there? What was that? Where did that come from? And that's what we're seeing more and more of. Those climate variability that we have in there, everything is shifting. The average is shifting up, but you gain those peaks, extremes that are really knocking us for 6, and we have to be mindful of those. So in general, even though we are calling for below to near average rainfall, you can still have flooding. It doesn't mean that there won't be flooding. You can still have an event that's really off the chain. And then you ask, but I thought the rainfall was going to be below average or just average. What happened there? It's just that one-off event that can knock you out. Same thing can happen with a storm or hurricane that rolls through here. It can give you copious amounts of rainfall, just out the blue, and devastating damage, obviously. Temperatures. A lot of people ask for this every year. Hot. And it's going to be hot again this year. August and September, peak of our heat season. I kind of blow up this map here for you on the right so you can see what our predictions are for coming into August and September, which is the map to the top right and right bottom, if you like. We focus really on down the urban areas like St. Michael and also in parts of St. James, expected to reach temperatures around 34 degrees Celsius. Now, folks, this is nothing new, and we don't anticipate to break records this year, like in 2023, but it's going to be hot as usual. And what can really make you feel hotter is the fact that if we don't have as much rainfall days, so there ain't going to be that relief that you'd like to, if you get a day of rain, you get a little break from the heat. That's what's important, the breaks. But if it's day after day after day of heat, it feels relentless. And hence, therefore, you call that heat wave. There is a strong possibility that we will experience heat waves in the coming months, especially in August and September. So just be ready for that. It's just not about hurricanes and storms. In particular, wind, and if such a system develops and passes to our north, that's when it cuts off our air supply, and it feels really hot. And that's when you can really feel in those areas. The reason why we put this, you can see 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026 side by side there. And like I mentioned, 2023 was a record-breaking year. 2024 was the warmest on record globally. 2026, you can see we start with June and July. You see those orange colors around the island, a little cooler than what you saw in previous years. So that's a good thing. That means that we're at least not starting off as warm as previous years. And that's why we're that's why we're confident that this year we shouldn't break our record. And let's hope that's true. Key takeaways: average hurricane season, average to below average rainfall, dry periods in the rainy season. We're really confident on that. El Nino to continue to support above normal temperatures during the heat season. And although not in here, probably will compound temperatures going into the next dry season as well. Let's just talk about our preparedness, which I won't go very heavy into, but in essence, that's pretty much it. I'd like to thank Chair and the opportunity to make this presentation, and I hope this information will be used to everyone who listened. And please do follow the advice from the Department of Emergency Management. It's very, very important in their role that they play, and also the other players are also in this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sabu, for your prognosis for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. And once again, the message has been reinforced that all it takes is one major event to cause significant damage in Barbados. Now, as part of our mandate, the Department of Emergency Management is responsible for public awareness, and we have a small PR unit here at the Department of Emergency Management, comprising of myself, Mr. Nathan Gibbons, our PR consultant, Ms. Tonya Blackman, another consultant as well, Program Officer Ms. Julia Rollins-Bentham, as well as our Librarian Assistant 3, Ms. Antoinette Clark. So to tell you a bit about our activities overview and also the possibility of partnership with the Department of Emergency Management for the hurricane season, I will now invite my colleague, Mrs. Julia Rollins-Bentham, to give you an overview of our activities for the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season.
Thank you. Good morning. The theme for this year's hurricane season is Operation Act Before Impact. Now, to get people to act, they must first have to know what to do. So this year, a lot of our activities will be centered around building public awareness. But as you know, we cannot do it alone. This year, we are thankful to have our partners with us, the Barbados Defense Force, the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Sagicor, and the Barbados Government Information Service. Together, we will work on raising that awareness and sensitizing the public more about the hurricane season, as well as other hazards. So we've already started our social media campaign that began on May 14th. And basically you can go online on any of our social media pages where you will be able to see and get updates and tips on what to do and how you can prepare. Yesterday we had our annual church service at the St. James Parish Church, and today we're here at the press conference. Now every Tuesday for the month of June, we will have what we call Trivia Tuesdays. This activity involves a question being posed on the DM social media channels, and then you will have the correct answer given in the evening time. And that occurs every Tuesday. We also have our podcast, Real Talk in the Face of Danger. And that basically, again, we will highlight a topic or issue where we would invite the public to view that podcast and learn more about it. Coming up in July, we want to have the DEOs, our District Emergency Organization, our volunteer arm. They'll be having their annual conference, the second annual conference, coming up in July. And that seeks to ensure that members of the DEO can further develop and implement disaster risk reduction strategies within communities. We're also partnering with the Ashley Lashley Foundation, Safe Coast BIM. They have their event as well coming up in July. And basically, we at the department, we provide training and give support in that area, in the area of disaster management. Science Expo and Youth Forum is what we're looking at in August. This event will form part of the Resilience Conference being hosted by the University of the West Indies and is designed to promote and encourage the development of early warning systems to alert the public about impending disasters. Now this year, we want to return to the DEM game show. It was a show I am told that we had a couple years before. So we want to return to the DEM game show, and we're looking to do that in September. That is done with the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. This event is designed to encourage persons to think about the disaster management cycle, which involves mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, and test their general knowledge of each section. So again, you see we're building that awareness and that knowledge generation. Now, we in disaster management today learned a lot of lessons from those who were in disaster management in the past, in years ago. And every year we do what we call a seniors event, where we look to do something with our seniors. We don't want to leave them out. This year, our intention is for our seniors event, looking at on the front line, stories from past disasters, where we're going to be inviting members of who were once involved in disaster management to come out and share their stories. This event is designed to allow retired disaster management practitioners to share their stories while in the field and how they're prepared for impact with current practitioners. It moves beyond the timelines and reports to explore judgment calls, missed signals, unexpected successes, and the human impact that lingers long after the emergency ends. We'll share this event as well with the public. The public will be invited to attend this event. And of course, our youth, the young people. How can we get them more involved in disaster management? We're looking at expressions of disaster through the eyes of the youth. This is going to be an evening showcase that provides the youth with a platform to share their perspectives on disasters through visual arts, poetry, music, and spoken word. This event highlights how young people interpret, experience, and respond to crises that shape their communities. And they'll be doing so guided by the theme, Operation Act Before Impact. So again, these are just a few of our activities designed to raise awareness and knowledge among members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, for giving us just a bit of a synopsis of the activities that we have coming up. And definitely we cannot achieve these activities without the participation and partnership with the relevant media houses. So we said that disaster management is not solely the responsibility of the Department of Emergency Management. We have a number of stakeholders that work with us to assist us in achieving our goals. And the ultimate goal is the preparation of Barbados to manage any major hazard. So at this point, we want to invite our partners to give some brief remarks. And to start these remarks, we have none other than Brigadier the Honorable Carlos Lovell, Chief of Staff of the Barbados Defense Force.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, Honorable Minister, Permanent Secretary, Director Kerry Hinds, distinguished members of the media, fellow Barbadians. I bid you all a warm good morning. It is indeed a privilege to stand alongside the Department of Emergency Management and to speak on behalf of some of the key stakeholders in our National Emergency Management System as we mark the commencement of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. From the outset, as we assemble to reassure Barbadians and visitors alike that we are well poised, well prepared, and well equipped for the season, I wish to encourage all Barbadians to take ownership for their community readiness as we begin this hurricane season. This year's theme, Operation Act Before Impact, could not be more appropriate. The collective experience of the region has taught us that the theme is key to surviving a hurricane, saving lives, and getting back on our feet as quickly as possible. It reminds us that preparedness is not something that we do when a storm is approaching. It is something that we do long before the storm clouds gather on the horizon. It is decisions that we make today that determine how well we withstand the challenges of tomorrow. This morning is therefore more than a ceremonial launch. It is reassurance, and it is a national call to action for every Barbadian. Because, as it is well known that in this region, it is not a matter of if we are impacted, it is a matter of when. Today is a moment for all of us to acknowledge that the threat is real, that responsibility is shared, and that the time to act is now. Before any system forms, before any warning is issued, and before any community is placed at risk. As a small island developing state, let us learn the lessons of past disasters and understand that hurricanes are not distant possibilities. They are recurring realities. These hurricanes do not recognize borders, social status, or economic circumstance. They affect entire communities and countries. Communities who need to be prepared for what may come across the Atlantic. What history has repeatedly shown us is that the quality of our preparation is more important than the size of our response. That determines how quickly we recover. In the force, we have learned that time spent in preparation is never wasted. We know that proper planning and preparation prevent poor performance. The same is true, however, for every household, every community, and every organization across Barbados. The best time to prepare for a hurricane is not when the warning is issued, it is today. As you may be aware, the Barbados Defense Force has an important national role in supporting the National Emergency Management System, the Department of Emergency Management, and every single Barbadian in the aftermath of a severe weather system. This is a role that we take extremely seriously, and I am pleased to report that the Barbados Defense Force is ready. We have completed our annual hurricane preparedness program, and we stand ready to support the national emergency response effort. Over the past several months, we have reviewed and updated our contingency plans, inspected equipment and facilities, verified the readiness of our personnel and assets. We have conducted training and emergency response exercises, which were designed to ensure a rapid and comprehensive response should the need arise. Simply put, we are not waiting for the storm clouds to gather to begin preparing. That work is done. The BDF is ready to respond, but we also urge all Barbadians to be prepared as well. Why? Because it only takes one impact. It takes one impact to devastate our way of life and to devastate this beautiful island. Over the past 10 years, the Barbados Defense Force has witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of major hurricanes across our region. Those experiences reinforce three important lessons. Lesson one, communities that prepare early suffer less. Lesson number two, agencies and groups that train together respond better. And lesson number three, communities that take readiness seriously recover faster. Barbadians, those lessons have strengthened our procedures, sharpened our planning, and enhanced our readiness for whatever the season may bring. Should Barbados be affected or impacted by a severe weather system, the BDF stands ready to provide engineering, transport, maritime, communication, medical, and service support as part of a wider national response. But effective disaster management has never been about one agency. It is about partnerships. Today, I wish to publicly commend all who worked tirelessly throughout the entire year to strengthen our national resilience. We are indebted in no small part to the Honorable Minister, to Director Hinds, and to other key stakeholders who have worked tirelessly to ensure that we are ready to face what the future may hold. Our National Emergency Management Framework did not happen by accident. It is a product of sustained planning, continuous coordination, and the dedication of countless individuals who work behind the scenes long before any emergency occurs. No single agency possesses all of the resources, expertise, or capacity required to manage a major disaster alone. Success depends upon a whole of nation approach in whichever organization understands its role, every community contributes, and every citizen accepts personal responsibility for preparedness. That spirit of partnership and community remains one of Barbados' greatest strengths. To the people of Barbados, I wish to leave a simple message. The best preparation begins at home and in our communities. Government agencies will continue to plan, train, and stand ready to respond. However, the resilience of our nation ultimately depends upon the preparedness of our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities. I had the opportunity to visit Jamaica in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, and the devastation there was heartbreaking. The people who weeks after the impact were still walking around in a daze was something that was palpable. And Barbadians, I say to you, let us not be a statistic. Let us learn from the Jamaica experience and be prepared. I encourage every Barbadian to take practical action now. Review your family emergency management plan, replenish your emergency supplies, secure your properties, know your evacuation routes and shelter locations. Stay informed through official channels. Most importantly, do not become complacent. The experiences of our neighbors throughout the Caribbean have shown us that hurricanes can intensify rapidly and produce devastating consequences with little margin for delay. As Chief of Staff of the Barbados Defense Force, I assure the government and people of Barbados that defense remains with us, but the defense against severe weather systems. We remain vigilant, capable, and prepared. Together, with preparation, partnership, and personal responsibility, we can meet whatever challenge this hurricane season presents. In conclusion, Honorable Minister, colleagues, I thank you for the opportunity to address this press conference, and I am prepared to answer any questions or address any concerns. May God continue to bless and protect Barbados, and may we all have a safe and resilient hurricane season. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
We want to thank Brigadier Lovell for his very inspiring words. Barbados is ready, the BDF is ready, and we're just encouraging everyone to take preparedness seriously, especially at the personal level. At this point, we also want to invite one of our media partners, represented here, the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. We're going to invite the president of the CBU, none other than Mr. Anthony Green, to give his brief remarks.
Thank you very much, and with the protocol established, I'm pleased to join you today in my capacity as CBU President and also the General Manager of Stockholm Network to reaffirm the central role of media in disaster resilience. For decades, media in Barbados and across the region has proven itself not merely as a channel of communication, but as a first responder. And I like to remind us of the well-documented fact that radiofusion, Barbados radiofusion it was called back then, that the manager of radio received a call that Hurricane Janet was approaching. And this was very early in the morning. The radio station was opened and an announcement was made. And back then, radio was wired radio with the radiofusion boxes. And if you know those boxes, then we know how old you are. The reality is that radio then went off around 11 o'clock or so. I'm told that's when the gentlemen who were courting had to make their way home to catch the last bus at 11 o'clock. And the radio would come on at 6 o'clock in the morning. So when Barbadians heard this box, because they didn't turn them off, they left them on, the radio would just go off and they came on. And when Barbadians heard this noise in the early hours of the morning, they knew something was wrong, something was happening. When we talk about early warning systems, back then that was the early warning system. And then that triggered a response where church bells were rung, and there was a level of preparation that is said to have at least gotten us a bit more prepared for Hurricane Janet and would have saved life. So we've always been a part of being first responders. I'm happy that even as our Caribbean neighbors in recent times have been experiencing catastrophe at the hands of these systems, media from Barbados and from the Caribbean has been a part of the response through SEDIMA and the other framework that is set up. In times of crisis, we inform, we connect, we calm, we mobilize. Our record speaks for itself. Through storms, emergencies, national challenges, we have consistently stood as a bridge between those who plan and execute and the public. Today, I too, like the Brigadier, want to commend all the agencies and partners represented here. The level of coordination and professionalism is not something to be underestimated. It's excellent. And the commitment continues, I think, to be outstanding. Of course, we will be able to identify areas to improve, but it's outstanding. And the collective effort is what underpins our national resilience. From a media perspective, though, we see ourselves not as observers, but as active partners in this resilient framework. And one of the things I want to recommend is, and see more of, is training for media personnel as first responders. We in the media remain committed to working closely with DEM and all stakeholders to ensure that timely, accurate, and actionable information reaches every citizen. In times of disaster, information is critical, but just not any information. Accurate, timely information from trusted sources is very, very critical. And it is what we do outside of the hurricane season as well, and this has been said too, that determines how effective we are when it matters most. When we talk about building resilience, it's not seasonal, it's a continuous thing. And one of the points to be made is that the stronger our systems, our relationships, and our preparedness are in calmer times, the better positioned we are to respond together when challenges arise. I wish to highlight an important reality: the resilience and continuity of media itself. Media viability is a collective responsibility. It's just not that of media organizations. Media is undeniably a public good. Now, if media capacity is compromised, then we risk weakening a critical pillar of national resilience. It is therefore important that we collectively recognize and support the role of media as an essential partner in disaster preparedness and response. And we have to include all media, yes, all channels, yes, including social media and digital media. But the institution of the media is what I'm talking about when I speak about media viability and the responsibility that we have and the expectations of our audiences that we are well able to continue our role as a significant pillar in disaster resilience. The media sector continues to demonstrate remarkable strength and adaptability and relevance in a rapidly changing environment. And these are the same qualities that we must not take for granted, but rather continue to strengthen when we talk about resilience. I want to close by saying, therefore, that resilience is not built in the moment of crisis. As we know, it is built in the quiet work, working together, identifying what our key pillars of society are, and working together and making preparation a way of life. And when that moment comes, it is together that we stand strongest in protecting our people. I thank you.
We would like to thank Mr. Anthony Green, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, as well as the General Manager of Starcom Network. And for our final partner remarks at this point, we want to invite Senior Underwriter at Sagicor General Insurance Inc., Ms. Kerry Bruce, to give her remarks.
Protocol having been established, good morning, everyone. It is Sagicor's pleasure to be here once again at the launch of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. This year's theme, Operation Act Before Impact, is both timely and necessary. It is a reminder that preparedness is not something we begin after a storm warning is issued. Preparedness starts long before the clouds gather, long before the winds strengthen, and long before uncertainty arrives at our doorstep. For us at Sagicor General, this message aligns closely with what we encourage homeowners, families, and business owners to do every year. Take action early to protect what matters most. This year, we have a new campaign titled Unbelievable. The rising repair and replacement costs demand a sharper focus. Many homeowners remain not insured or underinsured, leaving them vulnerable when the unbelievable happens. As such, this campaign is designed to spotlight the gaps by highlighting the escalating risks of storms and hurricanes alongside the dangers of underinsurance. Barbados, much like the wider Caribbean, is no stranger to the power and unpredictability of hurricanes. We have seen firsthand how quickly lives can be disrupted, homes damaged, and cherished possessions lost. While we cannot prevent storms, we can certainly reduce the financial and emotional impact they leave behind. That is why home and contents insurance policies remain so important. For many people, their homes represent years of work, sacrifice, and dreams fulfilled. Inside those homes are the things that make life meaningful, important documents, personal treasures, and memories that cannot easily be replaced. Yet, too often, many persons underestimate the value of protecting those assets until disaster strikes. Acting before impact means taking the time now to review your insurance coverage, ensure your property is adequately insured, understand what your policy covers, and make updates where necessary. It means asking questions, seeking advice, and making informed decisions before the start of an active season. At Sagicor General, we're committed to being more than just an insurance provider. We strive to be a reliable partner to our clients throughout the hurricane season and beyond. From guidance and support before a storm to responsive claims assistance after an event, our role is to help bring reassurance during uncertain times. We understand that in a moment of crisis, people are not only looking for compensation, they're looking for support, empathy, and confidence that someone will stand with them as they recover and rebuild. That commitment to service is at the heart of who we are at Sagicor General as a company. As we officially begin another hurricane season, we encourage everyone across Barbados to make preparedness a priority. Secure your homes, review your emergency plans, protect important documents, check on vulnerable relatives and neighbors, and most importantly, ensure that your insurance coverage is up to date. Preparation today can make all the difference tomorrow. On behalf of Sagicor General, I would like to commend all agencies, partners, and stakeholders involved in strengthening disaster preparedness and public awareness across Barbados and the wider region. Together, through education, planning, and collective action, we can build a safer, more resilient set of communities. Let us all remember the message behind this year's theme: act before impact. Thank you, and may we all have a quiet, safe, and prepared hurricane season.
We would like to thank Ms. Kerry Bruce, Senior Underwriter at Sagicor General Insurance, Inc., for her remarks, and of course the commitment of Sagicor with regards to ensuring that persons insure their property. And I do believe that one of the things that sometimes becomes overlooked during our preparations for hurricane season is the fact that even if you're in a rented property, for example, regardless of if the landlord insures the property, you can insure the contents of your rented property, so that even in the impact or the aftermath of the impact, you can still get those items that are dear to you replaced. So that's very important to understand, the value of insurance in replacing those items that are very valuable to you. So we have been able to so far give you a synopsis of what is happening with the hurricane season. We've heard the commitment of our partners, and we do appreciate the partnership of the Barbados Defense Force, the CBU, as well as Sagicor General Insurance. But we also understand that disaster management has a very strong policy foundation as well as legislation. And at this point, it gives me great pleasure to present to you our Minister of Home Affairs and Information, the Honorable Gregory Nicholls, to give the featured address. Minister Nicholls.
Thank you, Simon. Let me say again, good morning to all of you. Let me acknowledge my Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sharon Drayton, who is joining the ministry today for the first time. So let's give her a warm welcome. And let me take the opportunity to thank Ms. Wendy Odell, who was the Permanent Secretary when I first came to the ministry. She's now gone to the Ministry of Public and Private Investment. So I want to thank Ms. Odell for holding my hand for the last 3 months. Let me also acknowledge another significant lady in the ministry, Ms. Kerry Hinds, the Director of Emergency Management, who has been a solid rock of support for me. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Sabu, Director of Meteorological Services, who is one of the persons allowed to call me at any hour of the night, which he is not shy of doing. I acknowledge the Chief of Staff of the Barbados Defense Force, Brigadier the Honorable Carlos Lovell, President of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Mr. Anthony Green, Manager, Direct Sales and Support Services at Sagicor General Insurance, Ms. Kerry Bruce, Deputy Director of the Department of Emergency Management, Major Robert Hayward, staff of the Department of Emergency Management, members of the media, my fellow Barbadians, ladies and gentlemen. I open by emphasizing to all Barbadians that preparedness is no longer an option for us. Every year we are reminded of the importance of being prepared for the hurricane season. With an ever-changing climate and the current climate crisis that exists, preparedness is essential to our national survival and sustainable development. The realities of climate change continue to reshape how we experience weather events across the Caribbean region. Hurricanes are becoming stronger, more intense. Rapid events are becoming more intense and less predictable. Coastal erosion, flooding, drought conditions, rising sea levels are all increasingly affecting our economies, infrastructure, agriculture, tourism, and public health systems. For countries like Barbados, climate change is not a future concern. It is a present and growing challenge. This year, we are faced with the El Nino weather phenomenon and its potential influence on global and regional weather systems. As you heard from the Barbados Meteorological Service, El Nino occurs when ocean temperatures in parts of the Pacific Ocean become warmer than usual, disrupting weather systems across the world. These changes can influence rainfall patterns, temperatures, drought conditions, and hurricane activity. While El Nino conditions may contribute to increased wind shear that sometimes suppress the formation of hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin, we cannot become complacent as the threat of severe storms or hurricanes is still very much present. In fact, climate change is increasing ocean temperatures globally, creating conditions that can fuel stronger and more destructive weather systems whenever storms do form. What does this mean for us here in Barbados? It means the journey of preparedness continues. We've seen repeatedly across the Caribbean that it only takes one storm to cause catastrophic damage. Reflect on the catastrophic damage of Hurricane Melissa in our sister island of Jamaica last year, and right here at home. The November floods that devastated businesses and unfortunately claimed a life. Events such as these not only displace families and livelihoods, but also result in billions of dollars in economic losses and setting economies back by years. These experiences underscore why Barbados must continue to strengthen its preparedness and resilience efforts. The government of Barbados remains committed to ensuring that our disaster management systems are proactive, coordinated, and responsive. Various public and private sector entities, as well as the NGOs, who comprise the National Emergency Management System, have been updating, testing, and synchronizing plans and procedures since the first quarter of this year. Over the past 2 weeks, Prime Minister Amor Motley has chaired the National Disaster Risk Management Hurricane Readiness meetings, ensuring effective national level coordination. Through the Department of Emergency Management and our national emergency response agencies, we continue to enhance public awareness campaigns aimed at improving household preparedness and community resilience. We are investing in early warning systems and strengthening emergency communication networks to ensure that accurate information reaches the public quickly and efficiently before and after severe weather events. Infrastructure resilience also remains a national priority. Government continues to undertake drainage improvements in vulnerable communities, strengthen coastal defenses, and invest in infrastructure upgrades designed to better withstand extreme weather conditions. Our emergency shelter programs are also being modernized to improve accessibility, sanitation, emergency power systems, and accommodations for vulnerable populations, including the elderly and persons with disabilities. At the operational level, the Barbados Defense Force, the Barbados Police Service, the Barbados Fire Service, and other emergency response teams continue intensive training and preparedness exercises, and, more importantly, interagency cooperation drills to maintain the high level of readiness throughout the season. Now I turn my attention to you, the people of Barbados. You too must be able to play your part of the preparedness level in your own homes, in your own communities, and in your own workplaces. Every Bajan has a role to play in ensuring that we are ready for any eventuality. I therefore encourage all residents to review emergency management plans, prepare emergency supply kits, secure homes and businesses, monitor official weather advisories, and check on the vulnerable family members and neighbors throughout the hurricane season. As Minister of Home Affairs and Information, I assure the people of Barbados that the government will continue to work diligently to strengthen our resilience in the face of climate change and increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. We will continue collaborating with regional and international partners, investing in preparedness infrastructure, and building stronger systems capable of protecting lives and livelihoods. The hurricane season is a reminder not only of the challenges we face, but also of the resilience, determination, and unity that define the Caribbean people. Together, through preparation, cooperation, and vigilance, Barbados can continue to face these challenges with confidence and resolve. I leave you with this reminder: preparedness saves lives. Before I depart from the podium, there's a number of things I want to share with you. The Department of Emergency Management has its website, deminfo@barbados.gov.bb. It can be reached on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram. These hurricane tips for households, when I looked at these brochures this morning, it is a must-read for everyone at this time. As the Brigadier indicated, in one of my first conversations with him, he spoke to me about what they saw on the ground in Jamaica. A level of desperation and hopelessness on the face of ordinary people cut off from the community weeks after Hurricane Melissa. We have not had that kind of impact in Barbados. I want to acknowledge Mr. Sabu Brooks, who does a lot of work with the disaster emergency teams in the various districts across Barbados. They have been working hard and coordinating efforts to train volunteers, and I make the appeal here from this podium for more Barbadians to join the Department of Emergency Management as we recruit Barbadians to train them in all emergency responses, not only in the hurricane season. We shouldn't wait until after the impact of a hurricane to want to volunteer to clear a road, to learn how to move power lines, or to avoid going into places where power lines are down, or knowing how to respond to these things. We shouldn't want to wait until after an emergency, a landslide, after a torrential downpour, to wonder if the old lady whose house up the hill has fallen into the gully and whether she is safe. These are things that we have to do. So I'm appealing to Barbadians to come out and join their respective district emergency organizations. Disaster can hit us in any way, and even the very trained professionals can be cut off or can be affected in the emergency and might not be able to respond themselves. And therefore, we need to have that auxiliary group of persons able to be deployed at any emergency. Let us not wait. So the household hurricane tips, the brochure on landslides, which I read as a member of parliament for a community that has part of the Scotland district in it, the flood safety, Jackson floods, never flooded when I was a boy. All of these are important brochures that are available online. The mitigation preparedness activities, if you check all of these boxes, if every child, if every parent were to check and tick all of these boxes, have your emergency supply kit ready. This kit includes water 1 to 2 gallons per person for every day, non-perishable food, flashlights with extra batteries, a battery operated radio, I'll speak a little bit about that later, first aid supplies, medication lasting 7 days. Can't wait until the day before the hurricane to go and get your prescription refilled. You would understand how long the lines will be. Sanitation and personal hygiene items, cell phones with extra battery and chargers, a whistle. Something as simple as a whistle to attract the attention of emergency personnel. Put it over your neck, and a manual can opener, so that you'll be able, for those of you like me who rely on plugging in the can opener to open something, you might not have electricity for the first couple of days, and you might be staring at a tin of food that you cannot access. Something as simple as that. True. But all of these brochures carry important information that the Department of Emergency Management has produced. As I said, they're accessible online, but really, Barbadians should now take the time to sensitize themselves to these brochures. They are available. I'm sure we will have points, collection points, Kerry, where we can make them available, where people go to the supermarkets, at the post offices, and various other places of business that Barbadians gather to make sure that we sensitize people. Again, we cannot be too ever be over prepared. I want to indicate that the Barbados Meteorological Service, thank you, Sabu, for your report. They have their app. I want Barbadians to download the Barbados BMS Insight, which is the Met Office's app. We can follow the reports. We can know the various stages of disaster warnings, or I should say notices, because the warning is the last stage of the notice that you would give. Coming up with the lingo, Simon.
All right, you sound good.
Yeah, and you go to the app, download it, and make sure that you follow it. It should be one of the most used apps that you follow from June to November. But outside of the Atlantic hurricane season period, if there is an earthquake, we experienced an earthquake 6.0 on the Richter scale on Saturday, 90 kilometers to the south of Barbados. How many people would know where to go for information? Those bulletins are placed on the app and on the website. There's also an app the Cat Act by the Department of Emergency Management, which is undergoing some repairs, but will be up shortly. And I'm assured by the director that that is being rectified. I want to also bring to the attention of all of Barbados that the hurricane straps that are used to secure the roofs of houses, the ceilings that are attached, this government has spent over $300,000 since November 2022, thank you, Major Hayward, in procuring hurricane straps. So far, over 2,000 households have benefited from the affixing of those straps to roofs. It is a program being conducted between the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is has responsibility for disaster preparedness, and the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. We are going to continue to roll out the delivery of those hurricane straps to those persons who need them, but every carpenter, every builder, every contractor will tell you the importance of strapping your roofs. So if you need information about how we can access these hurricane straps, there are teams out there, as I said, as we speak, facilitating Barbadians who require them. The government has spent the money on acquiring the housing straps, and we are going to do our best to make sure that we can make your roofs in your homes more resilient and more sturdy. It's a program that the government is committed to doing. I've asked the Government Information Service to partner with the DEM to make sure that Barbadians become even more aware of this operation and how they can access this important security mechanism for their houses. I want to speak a little bit about AM radio. We have one AM radio station in Barbados, I believe, which is the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. That remains an important part of our communication efforts during any emergency. When the power is out, when the cell service is down, AM radio becomes a critical lifeline, not only to members of the community, but even to the emergency responders. The long wave lens signals from the AM radio travel, bend over the horizon, they even penetrate physical objects. They don't rely on cell towers or the internet. I've asked the managing director of Starcom Network about an initiative which I hope that we can partner with CBC and to make sure that we have an AM service available to all Barbadians. My children don't know what a transistor radio is. But during an emergency when the internet is down and the cell phone towers are not looping signals that you can access information, people in districts across this island must be able to receive information, be able to communicate that there are difficulties that need to be overcome, people in distress. And that is how we are going to have to communicate. So we're going to have to go back to having wider access to AM communication, because it is a reliable tool, and every hurricane or disaster emergency zone that I have looked at since becoming minister, and in terms of the recovery operations, the first responders and the communities have been using AM communication. We had, well, I'm not going to announce it before we get into the details, but we're looking at making sure that we can roll out something that brings back a little nostalgia to Barbados. I'm teasing you at this stage, but it is something that used to be in all of our homes when we were children growing up. Some homes still have it, but it doesn't work. But we are hoping to partner with you to make sure that we can bring some form of communication device in everyone's home that you can easily be able to be aware of all pending emergencies and know what to do during an emergency. So thank you for your attention. I believe that we will now move into the segment where we can answer any specific questions from the media.
That's right. I must thank our Minister of Home Affairs and Information. And I really got to thank my director as well. She clearly is keeping him immersed in disaster management and risk reduction. So they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I don't know who's the teacher or the student in this scenario, but definitely it augurs well for disaster management in Barbados. So as Minister rightfully said, now is the time that our media partners, you are free to ask questions, and we are hopeful that all of the answers that you are requesting you can get now. And if you can't get them now, please be reminded that we will get back to you as well if you want some more clarity on some issues. So we have a hand in the back first, then we will go to Mr. Wilkinson.
Yes, good morning. Paul Wilmanzi, Nation News. I wish the Minister of Housing was here because my question has to do with the quality of housing stock that we have at this point. I mean, with the rebuild in the aftermath of Hurricane Elsa and with the addition of the hurricane straps, which the Minister just alluded to, I would like to have an indication as to the level of resilience that we have within, as it relates to our housing stock at this point. And then also,
I didn't understand the specific question. You wanted me to give?
and either the resilience of our housing stock at this point. I mean, with the addition of the straps and the rebuilds after and repairs after Hurricane Elsa, I think it was. I just trying to get an idea as to the level of resilience that our housing stock has at this point. And then also the fisheries complex, which was a safe harbor that was impacted by the last weather system. What is the level of readiness of that facility in terms of sheltering fishing vessels this time around should an event of similar proportion reoccur?
Cover, thanks for the question. I can't speak to the specifics in relation to the resilience of housing in Barbados generally, because that is something that the Minister and the Ministry will have to address. That is not something that I am aware of in terms of specific details. But I can tell you that we continue to monitor that situation. The Ministry of Housing and the National Housing Corporation chairs one of the important committees within the emergency management structure, and they have been reporting in terms of how the housing stock in Barbados looks. There is a general concern that the roof structures that have been developed by Barbadians, my parents' house that was built in the 1980s, for example, carries that same design, has moved away from the more gable type shaped roof that was built with the ability to be able to allow the air pressure to move throughout the house without damaging the roof. And we've seen a lot of modern designs of the houses in Barbados recently without the overhang roof that had become prevalent in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So there is an awareness for Barbadians, the builders and homeowners are modernizing and trying to build more resilient roofs. That is why this government has expended, as I said, over $300,000 and is making available the operations to strap it, to make sure that we build that resilience capacity. And that is one of the moves that the government has made. These hurricane straps are being made available to Barbadians free of cost. Of course, if you have the means to acquire them on your own and to pay for their installation, that is always available as an option. But for those who do not, or who have difficulty in accessing them or even finding out about them. That is why this program was designed, to ensure we can build resilience at the very, very level of the homeowner. So we are acting to make sure we can build that resilience. At the same time, we know that the strength and the intensification that we have seen in a short period of time, as explained by Sabu, that we have seen where a tropical storm is on a horizon the day before, but it is a category 5 on the following day. That level of intensification, the rapid rate of intensification, is something that we are seeing now as a new phenomenon. So that we are not going to be able to build to create a situation where all houses all over the land can resist a hurricane, but we need to make sure that we communicate with people, we can get people prepared, the shelters, and access to shelters, proper warnings and notices are issued, and most importantly, in the aftermath of the hurricane, what are our continuity plans for business continuity, so the society and the economy can continue to work, we can get to people who are affected by it. Those are all part of our preparations. So in terms of our resilience is not only in terms of the physical infrastructure, but our ability to be able to respond to the emergency before, execute our plans right until the shutdown, and immediately after the shutdown to be able to do our impacts, to get to affected areas and people, and to be able to have a smooth transition as much as humanly possible and physically possible given the extent of the emergency impact. Those are all things that test our resilience. So not only in terms of the physical ability of houses to withstand hurricanes, only God knows, but at the same time we will do our best to make sure that we build in the capacity before, during, and after, so that we can keep Barbadians safe and we can return as humanly possible to a life of normalcy after the event.
The second part of the question, Minister, as it relates to the fisheries complex.
I am not able to speak to in terms of the fishery complex, but I know that they have submitted their reports to the emergency management plan, which has updated in terms of building out the capacity for safe harboring of boats. We spend a lot of time making sure that we can have discussions with some of the private marinas operators, and also building out capacity, getting a lot of the old vessels that have been berthed there, not doing anything to get them out. We're also looking at the storage, so we can haul out, improving the haul out. Those facilities are being improved. I believe the Ministry of Agriculture has acquired equipment to speed up the haul out of boats of waters as well. As again, those details have been submitted to the National Emergency Plan. So those things are being dealt with. To tell you in terms of the actual rate, I would have to go into the reports. I will check it before the end of the press conference and get back to you on that specific detail. But that management plan by the Fisheries Division in the Ministry of Agriculture has been submitted and updated, and I'm satisfied that we are able to respond to our fishing sector in a much more robust way than we did before.
Two questions, one for you, Mr. Minister, and one for Sabu. The first is, we heard the Chief of Staff allude to the fact that it's important for Barbadians to stay connected to the official channels. Last year, you would have had the Minister of Home Affairs state that his ministry was then embarking on broadcasting information with influencers and social media outlets. Is that something that you're going to be doing, or you are returning to the officialdom of just sticking with the media last year?
Barry, I will answer it by saying to you, it's not a zero-sum game. We have to communicate with people where they are. There are some people who are going to stick to the traditional media sources, but there are also people who are going to go to these. So that I'm not expecting a household with teenagers. They may have a grandparent and a parent who was an emergency responder that's out but is only with a grandparent, expecting that they can listen to VOB when there is access to the internet. But as I indicated to you, we need to be able to build out the AM capacity so that when all else fails, when the cell service and the internet is down, we can reach people. So it is not a question of media influencers, social media influencers versus the traditional media. We're going to have to use a combination of all of it. We are in a converged media environment. We're no longer in a broadcast media environment alone. We're narrowcasting and internet. These are the realities of the times. And we're going to be able to respond and to communicate through all media. And that is really the approach of the ministry and the approach of the government.
All right, the next question is for Sabu. Sabu, you would have, well, both of you would have indicated that hurricane preparedness is important, but you also said that we can expect to have an El Nino on this term. How can, or what would you advise Barbadians to prepare for El Nino? What can they expect, and what, is there anything that can be done for an El Nino preparation?
You know, so I thought, Barry, thanks for the question as always. I thought my example, the barbecue, would have helped, but it probably didn't hammer home there. And I do apologize for that, sir. Probably wasn't a very good, appropriate example.
No sauce. There's no sauce.
Okay, sir. I'll try to apply that now. So, Barry, like I said before, historically, El Nino tends to suppress a lot of the convection in the Eastern Atlantic. And therefore, obviously, that would impede tropical waves as they make their way from African coast towards our area to bring the showers, etc. Preparation goes a lot, not just for the Met Office side, but obviously DEM has a big role to play in there. What we do is tell you what possibly can come. And that's why we communicate with stakeholders well before this beginning season what you can possibly look out to, so that they can tailor their messages, all stakeholders, not just the Met Office. The Met Office is not the only player here. All stakeholders can then communicate with the various sectors within Barbados how they can react. Our job, our role in Met Office is not how to advise person how to respond, but it's to provide information that you can, all the other sectors, stakeholders, even persons, can then respond appropriately. So, although El Nino can mean a fall off in the rainfall, it doesn't mean you can't get flooding, like I mentioned. It doesn't mean you're not going to get that day where it just goes off the charts. It doesn't mean that you can't experience a storm or a hurricane. You can't let your guard down from both sides of the coin. There can be significant major events such as storm, major flooding, one-off day, and there can also be, which more likely is going to happen, periods of dryness. For example, let me give you an example of that, Barry. So in August or September, you may discover, hey, rain, you're not really getting rain for like the last 2 weeks, and this is wet season. Things start to look a little dryish on the outside. And so those things you have to think about as well, not just rain and storms. All those little in-playing factors in there, and plan for those. Plan for the heat season. High temperatures in September especially. It's the peak of our high temperatures of our heat season, September. Plan for that in terms of how you're going to keep cool, and I can imagine in an economical way too as well.
And I have one question for Kerry. We would have experienced, as we would have alluded to, the earthquake on Saturday. Was there any damage or anything reported at all regarding that 6.0 earthquake?
Thanks for the question, Barry. What we did, based on Saturday's the earthquake that we experienced, I think it was just around 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon, in the evening. It was a 6.0. While we did have reports of it being felt, to date we have no reports of any damage. What we encourage persons to stay informed, go to our various social media channels. We do have, with the earthquake hazard, you know, it is usually very, you don't have any preparedness, any, you just respond after the fact. But we note that we are in a seismically active region. We will have seismic activity from time to time, and it is important that you just focus on the various tips that we will send out over our various media channels. Unlike the hurricane hazard where you have 3 to 5 days and what's not, we can be here right now, we feel the shake. But the public information that we usually push out speaks to just some of the protective actions that one can take when it is occurring.
Barbados today. Minister, you mentioned that the Prime Minister and other stakeholders had a meeting 2 weeks ago to make final preparations for disaster management. AOPT, the Alliance Owners of Public-Owned Transport, said that they were not included in that meeting. Is there any plan to meet with them to speak about transportation as it relates to if there is a shutdown, if there is need for additional transportation in case of a disaster?
Yeah, our disaster emergency planning is ongoing. The meeting that was held over the last 2 weeks was the Emergency Management Advisory Council meeting with the Prime Minister and all the senior heads of the government to make sure that the emergency management plan for the year and all of the protocols have been satisfied. There is a transportation committee, a road clearing committee, and a number of committees that are coordinated through the Ministry of Transport and Works, so that that was basically the opportunity of those committees to report to the Emergency Management Advisory Council and to the senior public officers within government to make sure that the country is ready. So this is not, it wasn't a session for stakeholder involvement. It was the committee heads and the ministerial and departmental heads in the key areas and organs of government to make sure that they were reporting on the work that was done to activate their emergency management plans and to ensure that all of the necessary resources as at the level of government, whether you need to get as at the very granular level new generators, or ensuring that you have the ability to refill diesel tanks if there's an emergency, knowing how we can get that done, and speaking with the key sectors and within the private sector to ensure that those are done. So that was really a session to drill down on making sure the country's emergency management infrastructure is intact. In fact, we even started forward planning for 2027, and I've indicated to Kerry and the team that by September 30th, even in the middle of the 2026 season, I had that discussion with Sabu on the weekend, that we want by September 30th to be able to have the 2027 plan in place, because this is not only about hurricanes. As we just discussed, we had an earthquake on Saturday. We have bushfires that test our systems in the fire service and our ability to deal with them. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had to shut down the natural gas grid in Barbados. That is an emergency that this team has to deal with. So while the private sector transport owners are key and important, we will meet with them, of course, to ensure that they have developed their own protocols, but at the same time, they have to operate within a national emergency management framework, because we wouldn't want them out there on their own, willy-nilly just operating without following established protocols. When a watch or warning is issued, then the emergency management plan comes into action and is not a fellow there trying to make a dollar, because then we don't want to be having to go and rescue them from an event. So we can have those stakeholder discussions with them in terms of the transportation committee, but obviously the national emergency plan will kick in high gear once there is a watch or warning issue, to ensure that the essential personnel are the last people on the road and that they are home safe. And even to the extent the transport board, which is the National Public Transport Service, we got to make sure that those drivers, when the last bus leaves and comes back to the depot, that they get home safely. So I'm not going to get into the granularity of what is going to happen in terms of the transport plan, but you can imagine that we want to have it coordinated to the extent that we are sure that once the shutdown is issued, that we don't have private operators out there operating at their peril just to try to make a dollar, because it's going to compromise now the emergency management plan. So we will have those stakeholder discussions to make sure that they're included, but I want to assure them that it was not a snub. It was not established. This was the committees reporting into the EMAC to ensure that our disaster management plans are up to where they need to be for the current season. And as I said, we are looking forward, even in our planning, for the rollout of a plan on the 1st of January 2027.
Can you say when that meeting will?
It will be up to the chair of the transport committee to meet with them. We will take in a note to indicate to them. I will speak to Senior Minister Humphrey, under whose ministry the chair of that committee falls, to ensure that they are. But I'm sure that they are in constant dialogue with the minister, given the state of the sector and the plans are being spoken about mass transit and so forth. So I will communicate. I give the commitment to communicate with Senior Minister Humphrey that there's a request for the private transport owners to be integrated within the discussions as to how the emergency management plan will work.
Minister, the schools, as based on my knowledge, form a significant portion of the emergency shelters that are normally stood up during the event of adverse weather or hurricane, etc. Also, this period also coincides with the school summer repair program. What level of coordination has been done to ensure that in the event of such an event, that adequate shelters will still be available to those in need?
I will take the opportunity, Cobble, to thank you for the question. It is an important question. I'm sure Barbadians will like to know. I'll start by complimenting the Ministry of Education Transformation. The Chief Shelter Warden is the Chief Education Officer, and they have been one of the functioning committees. I mean, I shouldn't say functioning. Their committee has been one of the top performers of all the committees, and I am satisfied that there are 29 Category 1 shelters and 41 Category 2 shelters that will be available to Barbadians in the event of an emergency. All systems are in place. We have gone through, as I said, in terms of their reporting to the Emergency Management Advisory Council to ensure that the Ministry of Education Transformation is satisfied that these hurricane shelters are accessible and available to Barbadians. At the same time, I want to stress, your newspaper carried a story that misquoted me a couple of weeks ago, and that we are no longer using schools as hurricane shelters. But that is far from the case. But I want to emphasize that the government is committed to making sure that the schools are in a perpetual state of readiness. These hurricane shelters have become a priority. Indeed, our national hurricane resilience capacity is dependent on our schools. And these are primary hurricane shelters, and they will remain so. So we're not waiting until the summer period to repair them because the Atlantic hurricane season began today. So therefore, the Ministry of Education Education Transformation must be complimented for having the shelters up and ready at the start of the hurricane season, notwithstanding the fact that other schools throughout the system are being repaired and readied for the term. And indeed, the Ministry of Education has started the work in terms of bringing up the work, not waiting to this summer break in other schools, but have started. All now work is ongoing, particularly in the primary school sector where their common interest has been done. They have lengthened the period for work to be done. So it's not, again, as I said, a zero-sum game. The Ministry of Education has been working, Education Transformation has been working to make sure that all of these hurricane shelters are up to speed. They've given a detailed report as to the state of readiness and the operational plans to be kicked into gear in an event of emergency. There are schools that have been shelters before that have been changed out because they have been scheduled for repairs. All of that has been done. Some schools have been changed because of the proximity to the coastal areas and access to areas that may be cut off. All of that is an assessment that's been done. The plan has been battle tested as much as we can. and we will make sure that these shelters are available to Barbadians in the event that they are.
Minister, how many of these schools are have disabilities access? I know you all have plans to ensure that all buildings have that access. How many of them have that access?
I'm not sure what that specific number is. The issue did come up, and as to whether the disabled access was available at some schools, and I remember specifically 1 or 2 schools were mentioned in that regard, and the ministry did give the commitment that those will be rectified by today. So that commitment was done, and I'm sure that if in the event of an emergency, as the agency, knock on wood, that disabled persons will not be having challenges in getting there. I also want to use the opportunity now to say that the Ministry of People Empowerment has done excellent work in identifying the vulnerable people in our various communities. We have been very, very careful to make sure that we go out there, not only the ministry, but the Barbados Statistical Service, in terms of the work that they are doing to augment the people who go out there and do the assessments. We're working with the district emergency organizations to identify the vulnerable people in the community. We will be making more and more of that to supplement, because we need to identify those persons with disabilities and the elderly and persons who might not be able to get out of their homes, especially elderly living alone, far away from their children or so. Children might be overseas and stuff like that. Trying to access and making sure that we can have information about them and being able to get them to a place of safety in the event. So thank you for your question, but I want to, without bringing umbrage to the other committees that have been working, to signal out the People Empowerment Ministry for doing excellent work in gathering together that list, sharing it with the partners within the EMAT system and the emergency management system, so we can make sure that we can put plans in place.
As it relates to shelter managers, I don't know if you're able to speak to them. Have they been trained to interact with all people on all fronts, especially those who have hearing disability, those who cannot hear? We have one here, but have all shelter managers, have all people who have to interface or who have to interact with these people, have they been trained?
Major, do you want to answer that question?
The question is, persons
with disability, hearing disabilities.
For this year, I do not know. I don't know if Mr. Brooks can speak to that, but there was a time when, a couple of years ago, when all the volunteers who work in shelters were trained in light warning and working in sign language. We actually had a very engaging program for the 2 years of that. But that has not been done to my mind, as far as I'm aware, within the last 2-3 years.
As you can see from the inclusion of facilities for the hearing impaired at this press conference, it is built into our framework. Whether the shelter managers, who tend to be the principals of the schools, are trained themselves in providing services to the hearing impaired, I can't answer that, but I know that capacity is there in all of the shelters. This now means that we can also make the call for more and more people to be trained in sign language, and more people to be trained in being able to assist persons with disabilities generally, not only the hearing impaired, but the vision impaired and persons who have other disabilities as well. I made a statement from the podium that we can train as many people as our resources can allow. But what happens when those trained personnel are themselves affected by the emergency and cannot respond to the communities? We cannot therefore have enough people trained to respond to emergencies. We sat in this room at the level of the Emergency Management Advisory Council, and we've developed a system, and we hope that Barbadians generally will respond to it. We're going to go out there and do more and more training. We're going to ask those students from the University of the West Indies the Barbados Community College, the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology, as part of the Give Back program to respond to the training, because that is the best way to give back to your community, to be able to respond as a part of that auxiliary corps of people in an emergency with the knowledge and expertise of the trained persons that the Department of Emergency Management, the NGOs like the Barbados Red Cross and the others who facilitate the Citizens Bonds Radio, all of those other NGO partners who all come together to create this system of national emergency response. The Department of Emergency, the District Emergency Officers, training done by Mr. Brooks and his team. We want more people to volunteer. We want to be able to populate all of these emergency districts with a core of people in all 30 of them, to make sure that in each district emergency organization that we have enough people to respond to any emergency, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's land slippage, whether it's a flood, whether it's a hurricane, whatever emergency. It could be a natural gas leak, it could be a bushfire. How do you respond? What is your ability to respond to any emergency? So this is a call for young people to become more and more engaged and more civic-minded in terms of that. We know from seeing how responses come to other emergencies around the world, that is an all-nation effort in a disaster, in an emergency. The trained personnel are the ones that are on the front lines. This auxiliary corps to support them when they're out there is also necessary, and that helps the society get back together and be able to save some lives. So that is something that, as I said, if we all had the ability to be able to communicate by way of sign language, that would be an excellent thing. And therefore, thank you for that as a reminder that we can too play a part by learning sign language and learning to have a way in which we respond even better to persons with disability.
Final question from me. Sabu mentioned that we don't expect too much extreme heat in the early stages, but we have had an issue from early this year with low reservoir issues in different areas. Will we reach to a stage this year where we might have to have water prohibition this year?
We are very concerned with the low level of rainfall, and we are mindful that the predictions from the Barbados Meteorological Service suggest that we may have below or average rainfall. We get our groundwater from rainfall. That is not a secret. So that this is something that is being monitored. We are trying our best as a government to make sure that access to water does not become problematic and a recurring problem to people in the country. But at the same time, we are also mindful that when the rain does not fall with the frequency or the lack of intensity, as Sabu was trying to explain to me, that the heavier the downpour, sometimes it will lead to more runoff, where you have all of the water going and then out into the sea. But where you have sustained rainfall, it allows the water to penetrate and get into the aquifers. It is a problem. It is part of the climate change reality that we are dealing with, where we're seeing reduced rainfall, and therefore water shortages will happen inevitably. At the stage of water prohibitions, we are not there yet, but we are looking at the data. We are looking at the systems at the Barbados Water Authority to ensure that the leakages and the losing the, what they call the non-revenue water. That's the concept that they use to measure water that is lost through our aging pipe systems and all the regrading. That is why the government has been able to replace mains, have had to take on the responsibility of replacing mains that are aged some 80 years and upwards, all of it at one time, to make sure we build out that capacity. But to say now that we are going to issue water prohibitions, it may happen or it may not. it depends on a number of other factors, and all those are considerations that are actively engaging us at this time.
We have a student here from the Barbados Community College. He's an intern at Starcom Network. He has a question, I believe, for Ms. Hinds.
Hi, good morning, Ms. Hinds. My name is Trey Nicholls. I have a question on the earthquake we would have felt recently. In the event of damage due to an earthquake, are there any insurance policies in place that would help cover that?
We have, thank you very much for the question. We have the Caribbean, we are signatory to the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility and the what we call CCRIF or CRIF. And under that particular facility, the government takes out insurance in the eventuality there is an impact from earthquake or tropical storm or what's not. So that is in place for Barbados. It has to be triggered, and it wasn't triggered on Saturday because the impact was, it was just a 6.0 and there was no damage. Yeah.
All right. Any questions to any of the agencies that we have here? Mr. Brooks?
Question that the lady asked, coming out of the conference that was held last year.
Sabu, can you speak a little? All right, again, just pass these mics to Sabu, please. Mr. Brooks, can you state who you are so that the public of Barbados can get those who do not know Sabu Brooks?
Selvin Brooks, the liaison officer with responsibility for the district emergency organizations. We had a conference last year in which the focus on how can we get young people and persons with disabilities get more engaged in disaster management. The question that was raised that came up at the conference in terms of when persons are going into a shelter, if the shelter warden and his or her team was capable of effectively communicating with persons with disabilities. It was identified as a gap, and that information was shared not only with the Ministry of Education, but with the Council of the Disabled. And there were a number of training initiatives that have actually started so that we can together with also members of the district emergency organization, arm them with not only sign language, but how to, disability comes in different forms. A person may look quite normal, but has a disability, and the whole concept of the training is to identify persons with the different types of disabilities and how we can service their needs when not only when they come to a shelter, but when we are doing the vulnerability assessment in the various communities. So that is a work in progress. So to answer that, some efforts are being made to address those gaps that were identified.
Barry, Colville, Barbados today. Any other questions? What I will commit to doing, I am asking the Department of Emergency Management to issue a summary of the reporting that the various government departments and the committees have submitted to us, so that Barbadians across the nation can be assured that we've made sure that we can dot every I and cross every T. The reporting requirements of the Emergency Management Advisory Council are structured and intense, and we have gone through a rigorous process in making sure that all of the committees, how many committees carry there? 18 various committees across all of the sectors, including the private sector and NGOs, where that system has to be engaged. So we will provide a summary to give you the added assurance that there are preparations that are well oiled and well tuned for the hurricane season and any emergency. And also you might be able to identify gaps that we may have not considered or contemplated by just looking at. So I think we need to put out something there to give the further assurance that these are the systems, we've checked all the boxes and we've made sure that we can start the ground running. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, to move our vote of thanks, we have our Deputy Director, Major Robert Herwood.
Honorable Gregory Nicholls, Minister of Home Affairs and Information and Chairman of the Emergency Management Advisory Council, Ms. Sharon Drayton, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Home Affairs and Information, Ms. Kerry Hinds, Director, Department of Emergency Management, Mr. Sabu, Director, Barbados Meteorological Services, Brigadier Honorable Carlos Lovell, in his absence, Captain Jamal Samrodia, Mr. Anthony Green, President, Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Ms. Kerry Bruce, Senior Underwriter, Sagicor General Insurance. Colleagues of the media, good morning. It's still morning. I am Major Robert Herwood, the Deputy Director at the Department of Emergency Management, and it is my pleasure to move the vote of thanks for this annual press conference to usher in the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season. Let's first start by thanking God for bringing us through another year without impact. But recalling those severe rains, which our minister mentioned earlier, which we encountered, and the losses that we sustained just late last year. We pray that the 2026 hurricane season will be uneventful, but ever mindful of the other hazards for which we are vulnerable to. Just Saturday we mentioned, or we recalled the 6.0 earthquake, and just yesterday or last night, an aircraft emergency that had placed the emergency services on standby. We therefore wish to thank the Honorable Gregory Nicholls for providing the leadership to the National Emergency Management System and the support to the Department of Emergency Management program. Sir, thank you. Welcome to our new Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sharon Drayton, and we look forward to working with you, hopefully not too hard though, over your tenure. And it's interesting that you start your tenure at the beginning of the hurricane season, ma'am. Director Hinds, thank you for your continued leadership of the department and your support to our many activities, both past, present, and those for the future. Mr. Sabu, thank you for providing the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season for prognosis and always keeping us updated on any potential threat for which you have responsibility. And we appreciate that, notwithstanding the prognosis, you remind us that it only takes one system to severely impact Barbados. To our partners for 2026 Atlantic hurricane season interventions, the Barbados Defense Force through the Brigadier Honorable Carlos Lovell and his team, Mr. Anthony Green, President, Caribbean Broadcasting Union, Ms. Kerry Bruce, Senior Underwriter, Sagicor, the Barbados Government Information Service. Thank you all for supporting this Operation Act Before Impact. And we look forward to our engagement over the next 6 months as we remind the public and all of us of the preparatory, the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery actions that we need to ensure for our collective safety. Thanks to the media. Without you, our messages would not be transmitted effectively, and we welcome you into the fold of emergency services. Last but by no means least, thanks to the extremely hardworking staff and the supporting consultants at the Department of Emergency Management, who oftentimes go beyond the call of duty to make things happen. Once more, as we recognize that preparedness is really a journey and not a destination, let's act before impact. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. Thank you all. Let us hope we don't have to meet on any hurricane.
Hi, I'm Astra. An emergency kit is a critical part of any hurricane preparedness plan. What should you have in this kit? Here are some of the items you should have. Flashlights or lanterns, batteries, non-perishable food items, bottled water, a multi-purpose toolkit, first aid kit and medication, important documents, pet supplies, cash and credit cards, extra clothing, cell phone, and a portable radio.
Hi, my name is Gerard Aline. Hurricane preparedness is no laughing matter. Flood and wind damage can disrupt operations for days or even weeks, resulting in loss of revenue. To minimize this, trim trees around your property, inspect your roof and windows, and invest in hurricane protection solutions such as shutters and hurricane straps.